Live from the foothills of western North Carolina, this is RSN Sports Radio. And hello everybody, my name's John Thomas Hill. Welcome into this edition of RSN Sports Radio. And today's topic, we're covering the college football playoff. What a playoff it was. And I could hear the millions and millions of college football fans going, "We told you so. Didn't we tell you this was going to work? Didn't we tell you this was going to make the college regular season mean just as much as it did before, if not more? Didn't we say this was going to bring excitement to what has become a very dull bowl season for the most part?" Here are my thoughts. First of all, Ohio State, props for them for winning the national championship with a third-string quarterback who we had no idea who the hell he was about a month or so ago. Now we all know about him, Cardell Jones. And thankfully, he's staying in school, not getting tempted to go to the NFL after just 3 games. A lot of people had a lot of debate, including myself, as to whether or not Ohio State should even be in the playoffs, considering how TCU and Baylor played the regular season. TCU went to the Peach Bowl and dogged Ole Miss, blew them out of the water. Baylor in the Cotton Bowl, well, they played well against a very good Michigan State team, but lost a tough one there. But here's the thing. There's going to be the temptation to try and expand this to 8 teams already. And I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think we should do it just now. We should give the 4-team format about 4 or 5 years to really show if that's the truly best format, or are there teams on the outside looking in that deserve a better shot? Because here's my thing. I feel like that every single conference in Division I should have a theoretical shot at the national championship. Now, there are more than 8 conferences in Division I college bowl subdivision. That being said, obviously you're not going to expect somebody from the Sun Belt to win the national championship. But the very fact that they're in it and they've got a shot at it means that every single team theoretically has a shot at the beginning of the season to win the national championship. College football, Division I, FBS football, is the only sport where that's not a guarantee that you have a legitimate shot. If you win your conference championship and you get in the playoffs, that you're going to win the championship. Pardon me for just a second, folks. Yes, I know, dead air by dumb DJ. I had a phone call about a job interview, so quick, when's the 23rd? Sorry, folks, that's a Monday, is it not? Let's see. Hang with me, folks. I think it's next Friday, because today's the 16th. Yeah, it is next Friday, so we shall endeavor to do that. All right, back to the topic at hand, college football playoff. Here's the deal. The SEC is no longer the absolute best conference in college football. That being said, they're still on top for right now. But the gap between number 1 and number 2 has shrunk considerably. Ohio State is going to be strong next year. You can assume Michigan State will probably be just as good, and same with Wisconsin. Michigan will be better. How much better, we're not sure. Jim Harbaugh coming in there is going to be a huge pickup for them because it'll help in recruiting, it'll help in reputation, and it will definitely help in getting boosters behind the program again. Penn State will be back. And there are other schools that could. Nebraska, I think, has a legitimate chance. Mike Riley is in a place where he could really do a lot of good work. How long he'll stay there remains to be seen. He is 61 years old, so it remains to be seen how long he stays there. The Big 12 will be strong once again. I think of all the conferences, the Big 12 probably, ironically enough, benefited from the most, because here is a conference where you had, for quite a while, outside of the SEC, the most teams involved in the playoff hunt. You had Texas, A&M, not Texas A&M, I'm sorry, they're in the SEC. Texas Christian University, Oklahoma, Baylor, and you had Kansas State, thank you. So you had those four teams that at one time were in the midst of it all. Oklahoma slumped at a very bad time of the year. Now here's my thought. All four of those teams will be strong again. I'm expecting Oklahoma State to be strong again next year. So the Big 12, really what hurt the Big 12 this year was the lack of a conference championship game. They went around saying you're going to have one true champion. Everybody plays everybody else in that conference. 9 conference games, not against the other 9 conference teams. Well, TCU and Baylor tied. Baylor beat TCU. Therefore, Baylor should have been the conference champion. But TCU was higher ranked than Baylor. And the conference wanted to have the best of both worlds. Basically, what they wanted is both Baylor and TCU in the national championship playoff. Didn't happen. Both were out. So, what do? Well, they're saying right now they're not wanting to expand, but there are 2 teams right now who legitimately could be in the conversation to join the Big 12. One is obvious, BYU. They are currently an independent. This would be a huge boost to their program. Now, there are going to be people who say, well, they don't want to play on Sunday. No problem there. Now, would that mean that BYU would probably fall against the Baptist culture of Texas and Oklahoma, and because BYU is in the middle of Mormon country, not everybody likes Mormons in that part of the world. There are a lot of long-held prejudices still there, and that remains to be seen. But this is business we're talking about. BYU has a huge following, and Salt Lake City has a very rabid population when it comes to sports. Utah Jazz, year in and year out, no matter how well they are, record-wise, they're still going to get a great turnout at the games. Now, the other team is Boise State. Boise State is in the best position of all these schools because the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are going to be expanding very soon. There is going to be demand for high-quality football schools, and Boise State, as well as BYU, perhaps even Fresno State, perhaps even Colorado State, would be in a great position to bargain their way into one of these conferences. Now, the Pac-12 wants to lock up the Pacific Coast. So if the Big 12 starts indicating interest in Boise State and or BYU, don't be surprised if the Pac-12 starts rolling out the red carpet to welcome those teams in. Because if Boise State gets into the Big 12, the same with BYU, perhaps even UNLV, perhaps maybe Fresno State, then that gives the Big 12 a presence on the West Coast. Now, what does that mean for West Virginia? Well, first of all, this would be the first conference to truly span first major Big Five power conference to truly span from pretty much coast to coast. That being said, I don't think this is going to last because I think that West Virginia will eventually get tired of all the long road trips, and they may decide, hey, we're better off being out of the Big Ten or the SEC or the ACC, and there may be a bit of motion going on of maybe swapping a team out. Now, will we see another big realignment of college? Of course we are. The goal is eventually 5 16-team conferences. That's what we're going to see eventually. Is it best for business? I don't think so. I think the best for business would be 12. Ideally, the best would be 8. But what do I know? I'm just some schmuck who does a podcast. But to wrap it up, I personally think that the playoff was long overdue. You're going to have a lot of people say, we should have done this years ago. Hell, you should have done it 20 years ago. You should have done it 30 years ago. You should have done it 40 years ago, if you want me to be honest about it. And all this talk about, well, they're going to be playing 15 games now. Hello? FCS does the same thing with a 24-team field. Here's how you break it up. Go to 24-team field, okay? The bowl system, you can keep that. That's your first and second rounds. The quarterfinals are on New Year's Day. 4 games. You find a way to make it work. The 2 semifinal games are the day before the conference championships in the NFL, which would be this weekend. You would have had Ohio State and Alabama, Florida State and Oregon this Saturday, which would be the 17th. That would have been 2.5 weeks after they were played this year. You have the CFP championship played the same day as the Pro Bowl. Because the NFL really doesn't need the Pro Bowl. This would be the perfect excuse to get rid of the Pro Bowl. Okay? Nobody cares about the Pro Bowl. Not really. Maybe some diehard NFL fans and some players might, but the reality is most viewers don't care about it. So there you go. Now, will we see it happen? Not anytime soon. There's going to be a lot of talk about moving it to 8. My prediction is by the end of this decade, you're going to see the college football playoff expand to 8 teams. Then, before the year 2025, you're going to see the playoff expand to 12, perhaps even 16. And then by the time 2030 rolls around, then I think you're going to go to 24. It's no real press to get to 24 teams, or even to 16. But I think 16 allows you to at least have the small conferences represented. They get their fair shot. And everybody has an opportunity. That if you're a conference champion, then you get an opportunity to get in there. You still have 5 at-large bids, and the top 5 teams will probably, the top 8 teams will have, I don't know. It's to me, it makes much more sense to have it like this. And Notre Dame's always going to be out there as an independent, but in my honest opinion, if they don't get a here's a phone call. Hang on, let me mute it again. All right, we may have to re-record this. I've had 2 phone calls during this podcast. I really should have had music playing in the background, but, Oh, well. Let me get back to one last point. Or let me just wrap it up. College football, the regular season will always mean something. You could have 24 teams in the playoff, and it's still going to mean something. But here's the thing. Because you're not going to have 4 or 5 teams going from the SEC. I would cap it at most 3. Or not even that, 2. Because you're going to have enough teams from the Big 12, the Big 10, the Pac-12, and the ACC to make enough of an at-large field to where you can have the Mid-Atlantic, the CUSA, the AAC, the Sun Belt, and to have these conferences, give them a shot. Let them have an opportunity to grab the brass ring and to prove the mid-majors can play on a top level. So maybe within 15 years we'll see that. But for right now, we're going to stay at 4. End of the decade, we may go to 8. And then maybe 5 to 10 years after that, we'll go to 16. As for conference realignment, it's coming. The Big 12, with what happened this year, is going to want to expand back to 12 teams so they can get a conference championship game again, which for some reason, I don't know why the NCAA has to stand by that rule. You have to have 12 teams to have a conference championship. But that's, I don't know. The NFL playoffs. Enough with the talk about the Panthers didn't deserve to get in. They beat a very good Arizona team. Yes, they were starting a third-string quarterback. You held a team to the lowest output offensively in playoff history. There have been really bad offenses in the playoffs, and they got more yards than the Arizona Cardinals did. So, and let's face it, had the Panthers not made a couple of really bad mistakes that almost cost them the game early on, this game was not nearly as close as the final score indicated. This game should have been a shutout. So, and they go into Seattle, probably the hardest place to play in all of the league, and for most of the game, they're hanging with the defending champs. And had Cam Newton not thrown that pick that was taken back by Cam Chancellor for the touchdown to make the game 31-10 instead of throwing a touchdown to make it 24-17, who knows what would have happened. So Seattle deserved to win. They played better than the Panthers did, but don't knock the Panthers. They played great. They've had a hell of a run, 5 straight wins. They were like the New Orleans Saints, the Seattle Seahawks a couple of years ago when they beat the New Orleans Saints, who were the defending Super Bowl champions, I should say, and beat them at home, and then lost the next week. But the fact is, look what they've become. If we follow in Seattle's footsteps, and we follow Seattle's model, a couple of years from now, there may be a Lombardi hanging in Bank of America Stadium. Now, let's talk about this weekend's games. First of all, we have the NFC Championship between Green Bay and Seattle. Green Bay is a much better team than they were at the beginning of the season when we had this opening game between the Packers and Seahawks. There's only one problem. Aaron Rodgers is hurt. He's got a partially torn calf muscle. He can't move around that much. And against Seattle's defense, if you cannot move around, you're in trouble. Now you have Ed Lacy to run the football. He can produce some yards. If he can get some yards against the Seattle defense, which, if you look at last week, the Panthers were running with some success against that Seahawks defense. And Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Cam Newton. That, without a doubt, Cam's good, can be better, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. That being said, I cannot pick against Seattle. When it comes right down to it, I think you can legitimately say the Seattle Seahawks have enough offense with Marshawn Lynch in the backfield and enough the wide receiver core to move the ball with some success against the Green Bay defense. It is going to be a very tough game, a tight football game. But I got to go with Seattle winning this game 24-21. Now, for the game we all think is going to be New England's, but, and the immortal words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. The Indianapolis Colts went into a stadium, very hostile, beat a quarterback who may not be on his best health, but still, it's Peyton freaking Manning. And let me take a moment to say this. Why are you blowing up a team that went to the Super Bowl last year, went to the divisional playoff this year, unless you feel like that you're going to have to rebuild the team anyway because Peyton's going to retire at the end of this season anyway? There's something going on here that we're not being told about, or they're about to go have a little conversation with Peyton going, we need to move in another direction. Could they be willing to blow up this team right now, which still has potential? So, I'm just shocked they got rid of John Fox. He's been successful. Now, they haven't been able to get across that, bring it home that Lombardi, but you had it last year. You ran into a very good Seattle team. You could have gotten there this year, but Peyton just happened to get hurt. So, it is what it is. Now, back to the agenda at hand. Indianapolis, New England. Everybody and their mother's going to be picking New England to win this game. They've been on a roll. But Indianapolis has enough of a defense to frustrate Brady enough. If Indy plays a great defensive game, and I think they can, and if Andrew Luck is able to move the football down the field and not make mistakes, and they can get enough of a running game going, Colts can win this game. Are they going to win it? I don't think so. It's going to be a lot closer than people expect. But the experience of Tom Brady, that New England defense is going to be good enough to push the Patriots over the goal line and get them to the Super Bowl once again. Final score, I have the Patriots 31, Colts 27. So there you go. I will say this. It had not been for Aaron Rodgers being as hurt as he is right now. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I'm taking Green Bay to beat Seattle. So I was tempted to pick Green Bay and Indianapolis in these games. So don't be surprised if there's at least one upset. So anyhow, that's the college, not college football, pro football. Thank you. Briefly on to UFC. Now, I don't know anything much about UFC. I'll be the first to admit. But I'm a wrestling fan. I know who CM Punk is. And CM Punk is now an Ultimate Fighter. He is an MMA fighter. Or he's going to be. It's caused a lot of controversy in the MMA mixed martial arts world and all of this. Here's my viewpoint from somebody who has practically no knowledge of MMA. He will probably not win a title, but he will be respectable. I think he'll lose his first fight, but he'll fight hard. He'll fight respectably. I think he'll win his either the second or third fight. And I think by the time he decides to hang it up, I think he'll be a winning fighter. I don't see him staying in this more than 2 or 3 years. He's in his mid-30s, maybe late 30s, I think. He was born in 77, so he's more like late 30s. He doesn't have that many years left in this, so he's got to strike while the iron is hot. In my viewpoint, I think that CM Punk will be moderately successful. He'll be successful enough to where he can hang his head, hold his head up high and say, yes, I did it. I met my expectations and exceeded my expectations. I'm going to go on to become a commentator or go do something else. Now, the one thing you got to admit, CM Punk's going in this without any delusions. He's freely admitting he could get his ass kicked that first fight, get knocked out in the first round, and get his ass handed to him. And that's a very smart thing on his part. He's not thinking he's going to go in and blow the doors off the joint and become the next UFC champion in whatever weight class he fights at. Maybe he will eventually get there. But he's taking it in such a way, he's basically like this. He knows he has a fan base. A good chunk of that fan base are UFC fans. Another good chunk of that fan base would become UFC fans when they follow him over to it and get a chance to watch fighters other than himself and get involved in it. Now, is this a sign of desperation on UFC's part? No. Things are a little down right now for them, but they're down for any company in the pay-per-view business. Piracy is a big issue. It'll always be a big issue. But another thing is, it's the fact there's so much competition out there. And there's other ultimate fighting groups out there. You have Bellator. You have others. I'm not sure of. World Series of Fighting, I guess, is on NBCSN. And there's probably going to be others cropping up from here to there. So UFC has plenty of competition. It's still the top on the block. It has that great deal with Fox, especially Fox Sports 1. They get a lot of coverage on Fox Sports 1. So, they get a good rating there. So they have a very good partner in Fox Sports. Because if they weren't on Fox, let's say they were on ESPN, they'd be lost in the shuffle on ESPN. But Fox Sports, really all they have is baseball and the NFL. And they do have World Cup soccer, but that's only once every 4 years. So, pretty much, they get plenty of attention. It was a very smart move to Fox because it gives them airtime. It gives them the opportunity to build these fighters up. And I admit I'm not much of a UFC fan. I'm not even really a UFC fan at all, but I do know about CM Punk. I do know that I'm probably going to watch him, at least watch his first fight and see how it goes, and probably watch more UFC over time. I'm not saying I'm going to become a big fan of it. I don't know, but we'll see. And that's really all you can hope for. Get the casual viewer to tune in and realize it's not a slaughterhouse. It's rougher than boxing, but at least in this sport, from what I've seen, it's not as brutal. In the sense you're not seeing all these headshots. And that's the reason I can't watch boxing, is because of all these deadgum headshots they take. So, all right, let's talk briefly about the NBA. Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. He says he doesn't want to be traded. The Lakers are not going to be good anytime soon. Kobe wants to retire with another championship. Can he get that with the Lakers as they are? Not for a while. They would have to blow up the team and bring in some key free agents in the offseason, which I don't really see any free agents out there unless they were to luck up and get LeBron James. And even then, I don't think you're going to be able to have LeBron James and Kobe Bryant coexist. Will Kobe be traded? Very good question. I just don't see it happening. I think in his point of his career, he wants to retire a Laker. I think he'll play this year, then play again next year, and then retire. He wants 20 years as a Laker, and I think he'll get it. I think right now the main motivation is records. And if you get the kind of team around him next year to make an outside shot at the title in a very competitive West, who knows? Let's go to LeBron James in Cleveland. All right. There's a lot of panic going on in Cleveland. They're not playing that well. They're under 500 at the moment. There's a lot of speculation that David Blatt, their head coach, is going to get canned. Let me give you the immortal words of Aaron Rodgers. RELAX. Relax. The East sucks. The Hornets are 15-25, and they're 10th. They're a game and a half out of a playoff spot. There are teams that don't deserve to be in the playoffs that will get into the playoffs because the East is so damn weak, and the West is so damn strong. So the Cavaliers will get in the playoffs unless they completely implode. If I'm LeBron James, I'm building toward making sure this team is strong at the end of the season. Kevin Love has to step up his game defensively. Kevin Love has to find a way to fit into the system. David Blatt has to find a way to get this team to listen to him. Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James have to find a way to work as a tandem. They have talent on that team to have a very deep playoff run. That being said, I don't think they're going to win the championship this year, but I think if they get in the playoffs and they gel at the right time, they're going to be dangerous. Because I'm not so sure the Hawks have enough to make it the whole way. They're on top right now. They have a great record, but we've seen teams that had great records at the beginning of the season, and they falter at the end. Toronto, they have that experience. Atlanta's an experienced squad as well. They're going to be interesting to watch. But in my book right now, the team to watch out for, the two teams, Washington and Chicago. Those two teams will be good, and they will be interesting to watch. Now in the West, Golden State has been playing lights out. But as long as San Antonio are in the hunt, you cannot count them out. Right now, they're, fifth or sixth, somewhere around there. They're not playing great, but here's the thing to watch out for them. They're in the hunt. They're in the playoff spot. If they get a playoff spot, they're going to be very dangerous. And home court doesn't mean as much as it used to. They're a veteran team. They know how to win on the road. If they're in the playoffs, I'm not going to write them off. But I think this is the last real run, the last real shot they have with Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, so that's really smart, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. Tony Barco, that's really smart. Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan, this is their last ride, I think, because one of the three is going to at least one of the three is going to retire at the end of the season, if not more. Parker probably will still be able to play for another couple of years. Duncan, he graduated in 97. Does he really need any more rings? Does he really need to do any more, prove anything else? No. I think he just wants to get one more title and hang his hat up and move on and do the next thing in his career. So, anyhow, Memphis is a team to watch out. Portland, at Houston. So, yeah, the Clippers will be dangerous as well. As for Doc Rivers trading for his son, Austin Rivers, I think a lot of people are making a bigger deal than actually is. I think Austin Rivers is still a young player who has potential, but I think his best potential will be as a role player. And I think he'll find his role in this team. And I think he'll either sink or swim. His father's smart enough to know, hey, I'll give my son a shot. If he pans out, great. If he doesn't, we'll trade him somewhere else and get something out of it. Austin Rivers is a good player that has potential to be a very, very good player, maybe even a great player in this league. It just, in my honest opinion, he should have stayed another year at Duke. But it is what it is. All right. Let's see. Baseball. Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs is saying that the Cubs will win the NL Central. A lot of people are going to be laughing at this. But look at Joe Madden, what they've done with that team. They brought in Lister. They brought in some other guys. There's still plenty of time to add more free agents. This could be the sleeper team. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the World Series like in Back to the Future, but the Cardinals are aging, and they're due to finally come back down the field. The Pirates, I think, are the best team right now as I see it, because I think the Cardinals are getting a year older, and they've not really done much outside of that. You know, they've gotten to the World Series and they lost, but they lost in the NLCS. But this year, I think they start their downward slide. Doesn't mean they're going to miss the playoffs. I just think that this is the year they kind of start showing that they're going to have to start rebuilding. Cubs have a shot. They're going to have to beat Pittsburgh. I think Cincinnati has a chance to improve. Milwaukee might be in the mix, so it remains to be seen there. And at least, well, the Braves are starting the rebuilding project. They're going to... The great over 20-year run of being a successful team is over. We're going to have a winter of our discontent. We're going to be living through that period of time that us longtime Braves fans remember as the late 80s when we sucked. So they're building up toward coming into that brand new stadium and being a competitive team again. They have 2 years to do it. Don't get me started on what I really think about this. Let me go ahead and get started on it. All right? I've been to Turner Field. They talk about, well, there's not enough parking there. There's not enough area. There's not enough amenities there. Guess what? There are these things called parking garages. There are these things, in parking garages, you can put restaurants, you can put shops, you can put all this other stuff. You could put a Braves museum there. You can get Atlanta to build a better MARTA station that comes to Atlanta's Turner Field. This stadium's not even 20 years old, and you're leaving it for a stadium somewhere else, which is going to be equally inaccessible to folks in the downtown area. I'm sorry, this is a very bad idea. You're telling me that you cannot put asses in seats at Turner Field? You're saying you can't? There's not enough parking? The hell there's not. Build freaking parking decks. You can do this. There's enough room out there, and I've been there. And I've been to other stadiums. I know what I'm talking about, people. Where there is a will, there is a way. And there was not a will, and they did not want to find a way. They wanted a brand new stadium so they can get the All-Star game and all this. And because they wanted to get that buzz going that Atlanta Falcons are going to get, because they're going to have this brand new stadium, and the Georgia Dome's not even 25 years old. It's not even 25 years old. You're building a new stadium? I was in college when they built that thing. And now you're building a brand new stadium? Come on, folks. This is a waste of money. You've got a perfectly fine stadium. You need to upgrade it, sure. Play a couple years in Bobby Dodd Stadium in Georgia Tech's campus. Do a major renovation on the Georgia Dome. Put a retractable roof over it. Add some seats. Take out some seats. Put some more boxes in there. I don't care. It's stupid. Okay? It's stupid. And the stadium looks ugly. I'm sorry, it does. It looks like some architect's orgasm. The architect's dream. It's not even a dream, it's an orgasm. It looks awful. Okay? There, I've said my piece about it. The Braves are going to suck this year. I'm already ready for myself to kind of hope the Cubs come through, because the Cubs are my second favorite team. Yankees are going to wander through the wilderness this year. Red Sox should rebound, but I think that the Orioles will be the best team in that division again. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that the Blue Jays are going to be competing, and I think the Rays are going to be sliding back down a bit Here's something to think about for the Tampa Bay Rays. They lost their best manager they've ever had in Joe Madden. They're going to start losing players. Fans are still not coming out. Even with that success, they still didn't come out. If they don't get that new stadium, guess what's going to happen? They're going to start looking. And here's the market they should go to. There's the market they will go to, and there's the market they should go to. The market they should go to is not Montreal. It's Charlotte. Here's why. The Carolinas are a hotbed for baseball. They have been and they will be forever. Secondly, there is no American League team in the Southeast, discounting Florida. The closest is Houston. And even they were not an American League team until last season. And Baltimore is the closest, but they're up above Washington, so they don't count. So the American League does not have a presence in the Southeast, and even the National League only have is the Braves. So Charlotte, in my honest opinion, would be a perfect place for an American League team in a very competitive division where you get the Yankees and the Red Sox. Why go to Montreal? Where you have a stadium that was just built last year that has potential to be expanded to a Major League Baseball field. Knight Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina can be, or BB&T Ballpark, I think they call it. Knight Stadium's down in Rock Hill. Here's what you do. You play play about 2 or 3 seasons in the old Knights Castle in Rock Hill, South Carolina. You expand there, make it like 35, 40,000 people. Get enough to where you can kind of make it long enough to where you can build, and you expand Knights' new stadium to put the Major League team in there. Build a 45,000-seat stadium, renovate that from 10,000 seats, I think it is now, 15,000 seats, I think, to 40,000 or 45,000. Charlotte would be an awesome American League city. Will they go there? I think there is going to be a push to put the Rays in Montreal and bring back the Expos. In my honest opinion, I think that would be a bad move. Nothing against Montreal, and Montreal has a lot of passionate baseball fans, but in my honest opinion, the best place would be Charlotte. So there you go. All right. Will Kansas City come back and repeat as American League champions? I don't know. Angels are still out there. They're older, and they're going to be under the gun. The Orioles will be a factor. The Tigers will be back again. The White Sox should be improved. The Blue Jays may be in the wild card mix. The A's are not to be discounted. The Mariners should be bearing to be watched because they were in the mix until late the season. So, Kansas City, you got a lot ahead, but it was a hell of a run. But can you do it again next year? I have my doubts. Okay. Now that's it for baseball. Hockey, well, there's not a lot to talk about. Although this year, this weekend, they start the national broadcast on Sundays on NBC. Honestly, if you're going to do hockey, you really need to put more games on NBCSN. They should have just kept the name as Versus. In all honesty, keep it Versus. NBCSN or NBC Sports. You know, I don't know. That's just me. But anyhow, hockey-wise, the Hurricanes suck again. You know, I am worried about the Canes. Attendance has dropped off big time. if they're going to stay in Raleigh, they got to start in this offseason making some moves to show the team can be competitive. Raleigh has shown they can support the team, but they cannot. But the way the Canes have been the last 2 or 3 years, they have shown that they've kind of become complacent. They're not showing they're aggressive enough. They have to show they're willing to do whatever it takes to become a winning team, a playoff contending team, a team that can go into the playoffs and make some noise. And it's disappointing that attendance has fallen off because there were a lot of Caniacs not too long ago. Now all of a sudden, the market's drying up. I think it has less to do with what they're doing on the ice than what they're doing off the ice. They're not getting people to come out to watch it. So you have to improve the on-ice performance, but more importantly, you have to do better in the front office to get people to put their asses in your seats. Okay? So there it is. The rest of the NHL we'll talk about at another time because I've not really been keeping up with it, save for watching the games here and there. But we'll talk more about it once football season's over with and I start really getting into it. NASCAR. Is it Kurt Busch that had the thing with the assassin girlfriend that Keith Olbermann was getting ripped about because he thought it was Kyle Busch? I don't care about that. Here's the thing with NASCAR. Please listen to this, okay? Yes, you had a pretty nice run with your chase to the championship with your little playoff system. In all honesty, it's another gimmick that in 2 or 3 years people are going to get tired of. You have to go back to making the season championship matter. You have to build around the major races. You have to build your stars up. You know, it shouldn't just be the season-long championship. The Daytona 500 is the biggest race of them all, but that's the beginning of the season. You're holding your Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. Here is an idea. Sure, you may not want to hold the Daytona 500 at the end of the season, but why are you holding it Homestead? You want a tradition-laden track. Now, if you move it to Charlotte or Atlanta, you're running the risk of weather. What about Talladega? There is a slighter risk. There's a less risk of winter weather being there, but it's still in a hotbed. Texas, it's got a lot of fans for NASCAR, but the hotbed of NASCAR has always been the Southeast. Florida, you know, if it's not Daytona, then why the hell have it the last race of the season there at Homestead? Homestead's a great track, but to me, if you want to acknowledge the tradition of NASCAR, you have to give the people what they want. You have to bring it back to Charlotte or Atlanta for the season-ending race, where all the marbles are there. So, but that's my opinion. There are no easy fixes in NASCAR. I think NASCAR is a niche sport that has a firm following. They should concentrate on that. Stop trying to be the next NFL. Okay? There is potential for growth, but you're not going to be the next NFL. Okay? All right. Now, other stuff. Boston hosting the Olympics in 2024. They have the right to bid for the 2024 games. We won't know if they'll get it for 2 years. Honestly, I've never been to Boston, but the people I know who've been to Boston have told me one thing. The traffic congestion is a pain in the ass. Getting around Boston is horrible. So either you build all the venues on the outskirts of Boston, maybe around Gillette Stadium and all of this, but they're saying, hey, we're going to build stuff in Boston. It took forever to build to finish the Big Dig tunnel. And now you're going to bring the Olympics to Boston. They don't have a chance in hell of winning this thing. They don't. Bad choice by the USOC. You had LA, for Pete's sake. Now, LA's not easy getting around LA because everything's so damn far from each other. It's so spread out. But LA was the last really successful Olympics this country held. Atlanta had a lot of problems, but I'd take Atlanta over Boston any day. Why didn't Chicago bid? Why didn't New York bid? And the fact is, the Olympics are starting to become way more expensive than they're worth. So in my honest opinion, I think the USOC just threw a bone. Hey, if Boston wins, great. If they don't, well, we're not out of anything. The Olympics, in my honest opinion, are pricing themselves out of the market. I think that NBC made a mistake signing that big, long deal to keep the Olympics till 2032. And I'm going to probably catch hell for this, but the fact of the matter is NBC may not even be around by the time that last Olympics are around because broadcast networks are dying. They may not be able to afford to host the Olympics in 2032. And I'm dead serious when I say that. Because the business model for broadcasting is changing. Ladies and gentlemen, it's changing big time. So, you've got a lot coming down the pipe. Y'all need to be ready for it. YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Crackle, things like that, they're the future. There's stuff that's not even been invented yet. That's the future. Broadcast television is a dinosaur that's not died yet. It won't die anytime soon because they've locked up these sports broadcast contracts. Will they have another chance to bid for any of this? Probably not. So there you go. There was that. All right, I'm going to get off here and rest my voice because my throat's starting to get a little bit sore. It's been a while since I did a long podcast like this. Sorry for the interruptions earlier. I hope you stuck with us. For everybody here at RSN Radio, hope you have a great weekend. Good day, good luck, and may the good news be yours.